This type of analysis led to the discovery that people take greater risks in cars that are safer. If you know your brakes won't lock up in an emergency, you might drive closer to the car in front of you. The skydiver Bill Booth might have explained this best when he said the safer skydiving gear becomes, the more chances skydivers would take in order to keep the fatality rate constant. In 1976, Sam Peltzman built on Stigler's ideas, suggesting that regulators bowed not only to industry, but that they also leaned towards decisions that optimize political support from groups that have an interest in regulation. He argued that regulators went through cycles of creating rules and enforcing them more strictly, but could then be convinced to ease up over time. Regulation and deregulation, he argued, are a natural part of the political process. The Merchant Marine Act of 1960, which is better known as the Jones Act, says that every time you want to send something from one U.S. port to another U.S. port, it must travel on a ship built in America, staffed by Americans, and funded by Americans. The ship has to be mostly built of American components too. It provides one of the best examples of the law of unintended consequence. The law was introduced over 100 years ago to protect the American shipbuilding industry and to ensure that there would be a raise to in times of war and national emergency. Based on its outcomes, the Jones Act has been a failure on the ground. Due to a lack of foreign competition, the act allowed American shipbuilders to push up their prices. American-built coastal and feeder ships cost 6 to 8 times more than comparable foreign ships. For this reason, very few American ships are built without purchase. The fact that the ships are so expensive means that it's cheaper to transport goods by rail or road. One alternative is to ship the goods to Mexico or Canada and then transport them by road to their destination in the United States to work around the Jones Act. Americans pay vastly higher prices to move goods around their own country because of the Act, and goods are particularly expensive in places like Hawaii and Puerto Rico, where they either have to choke down the higher shipping costs or import foreign-made goods. The Jones Act incentivizes using more carbon-intensive road and rail transportation, making it responsible for unnecessary environmental costs and unnecessary wear and tear on roads and bridges across the country. The Act additionally makes disaster relief during a crisis like a hurricane so difficult that presidents usually waive it for a few days to get life-saving supplies delivered. In the aftermath of Hurricane Fiona in 2022, Puerto Ricans were in desperate need of fuel. A BP ship full of diesel anchored right offshore was unable to deliver it without presidential approval because of this 100-year-old, outdated, and entirely pointless regulation. Well, at least it saved the U.S. shipbuilding industry, right? No. The size of the U.S. fleet has declined steadily since the introduction of the Act, and today there are only 93 ocean-going Jones Act-compliant ships. Typically, a ship has a total life expectancy of about 20 years, but excluding tankers, the Jones Act-compliant fleet are on average 30 years old. With regard to military preparedness, the House Armed Services Committee was told in 2018 that the dwindling size of the domestic shipping fleet demands that the country reassess its approach to ensure that the U.S. retains critical national security surge sealing capability. The Jones Act forces many U.S. states to buy commodities from abroad when they're domestically produced because of the high shipping costs. The average citizen of Hawaii pays $2,000 per year more than they should have to because of the Jones Act, which benefits a few entrenched interests at great expense to the broader American public. If you believe that the new administration's zeal for deregulation means that this law, which has failed on every front, will be on the chopping block, you'd be wrong. Both Trump and Biden have announced their support for the act because that's just the way politics works. The fact that laws like this are so hard to get rid of is exactly why citizens should worry about new regulations being introduced without a very good reason. As you would imagine, there is a lot of academic research on the impact of regulation on economic growth. A 2022 paper by David Riker analyzed how a nation's regulatory quality, as measured by the World Bank's World Governance Indicators, affected its GDP along with its trade with the United States. He analyzed 20 different countries. The highest regulatory quality was found in Singapore, followed by Australia and New Zealand, and the lowest regulatory quality was Argentina, followed by Egypt. There was a strong relationship between regulatory quality and productivity and the level of trade with the United States. Bruegel and Hahn found that countries with a more business-friendly regulatory environment grew faster than those with more burdensome rules, and that improving from the worst quartile of business regulation to the best can increase a country's annual growth by 2.3 percentage points. An Italian paper looked at regional differences between Italian provinces, where regulatory quality can vary significantly, and found that local institutional quality positively affects rates of entrepreneurship, and its impact is the strongest in high-tech industry. This all makes sense, as what these papers find is that high regulatory quality can improve a country's productivity, lower the costs of production, and raise the quality of goods produced. But when the amount of regulation becomes onerous, it starts to drive up compliance costs such that businesses become uncompetitive. Essentially, there's an optimal level of regulation where regulations that deliver little or no net social value undermine productivity, as the time and money spent accommodating them could be put to better use. A paper by Coffey, McLaughlin, and Pareto, published in 2020, suggests that regulation in the US may have gotten too restrictive, as they find that had regulation been held constant at its level since 1980, the US economy would have been nearly 25% larger by 2012. I came across an excellent article by Ben Hopkinson earlier this week on how Madrid tripled the length of its metro system, both faster and cheaper than almost any other city in the world. The 12-year expansion made Madrid's metro system one of the world's fastest growing metro systems. A 35-mile extension in Madrid cost about the same as the 1.5-mile extension of the 7 train line in New York. London's Jubilee Line extension, built at the same time as Madrid's expansion, cost nearly 10 times more per mile. Some of the efficiency came from streamlining the political processes around getting the job done. Construction began right after an election, with elected officials aware that progress would likely be rewarded by voters. Extensions to the project were also scheduled within 4-year windows tied to the political cycle. The timelines were set such that elected officials could open the lines and stations right before the next election if everything was completed on time, which incentivized them to get things done and stay on schedule. To stay within budget, the project managers moved quickly, leaving less time for the project to be exposed to global shocks, inflationary pressures, or chopping and changing by different politicians, which all drive up costs. To speed up building, Madrid removed unnecessary environmental impact requirements, sped up the approval process, and worked around the clock to finish construction on time. Environmental evaluations weren't sidestepped, but impact assessments were abbreviated if the work was occurring in an already established urban area, as the impacts to nature would be lower and the long-term environmental benefit of the project outweighed the need to analyze the CO2 impact of the digging. Approvals that would have taken 2 or 3 years in the UK or United States happened in 5 months in Madrid. In contrast, the British spent more than £100 million, which is $125 million, on a kilometre-long tunnel to protect bats as part of the high-speed rail construction, despite there being no evidence that bats were at risk from the train. The Madrid Metro company expedited construction with 8 tunnel boring machines running 24 hours a day, which meant that the disruption, which might otherwise have taken 8 years, only took 3. The fast work also helped the public accept the noise and disruption as they quickly saw the benefit of new lines and stations opening up around them. In Madrid, the metro stations were standardized using copy and paste designs which kept costs low and allowed for quick construction. London's Jubilee Line extension, on the other hand, used different architects for each station, and several stations were shortlisted for architectural awards. But they were also a lot more expensive to construct as each station was bespoke. In Madrid, new lines typically opened within 3 weeks of construction being completed. In contrast, London's Elizabeth line was completed in 2019 but wasn't fully opened until 2023 because of the complex digital signaling technology used, which required 3 years of testing before the trains could be open to the public. This switching system may be better, but 3 years is a long way. The takeaway from this video is that it's an oversimplification to say that all regulation is good or that all regulation is bad. Regulations are usually put in place for good reasons, but over time it makes sense to revisit them, analyze the outcomes, and see if the regulations are providing the benefits that were promised, and if they're causing any unforeseen problems or costs. Good regulation delivers benefits that outweigh its societal and economic costs and is administered efficiently and fairly. Excessive regulation, on the other hand, does little to serve the public interest while creating financial costs and frustration for businesses and the public. When we look at the World Bank Regulatory Quality Index, the lowest ranked countries are places like North Korea, Venezuela, and Zimbabwe, where often one rule is put in place, which causes a problem, and then other rules are layered on top of it to fix that problem, causing even more problems and even more regulation. Soon there are rules about everything and no economic progress can take place. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy wrote an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal where they argued that the new US administration could just halt the enforcement of environmental rules that are deemed unnecessary. This would liberate individuals and businesses from illicit regulations never passed by Congress and stimulate the US economy, they wrote. I don't agree that this would do anything to help businesses, as companies still have an obligation to comply with regulation, whether it's being enforced or not. But it would give an advantage to the least ethical businesses who are most willing to break the law. This is a third world approach to regulation where rules exist, but certain people, often those with political connections, choose not to follow them. I don't think that this would work in the United States either, as even if an agency decides not to enforce a rule, citizens can still sue companies for violations when states and federal regulators fail to. The only real way to reduce red tape is to eliminate or improve the regulation. If you enjoyed this video, you should watch this one on Yotta Bank and why Silicon Valley VCs are so concerned about financial regulation next. Don't forget to check out our sponsor, Brilliant.org, using the link in the video description. Have a great day and see you in the next video. Bye.
Your workflow isn't broken. It's just exhausting. TXF Intelligence sweeps the mess and makes sense of it. So your team gets hours back every week to focus on clients, not clutter. That's the TXF advantage.
Find your perfect tax expert, whatever your tax situation might be. Hand off your taxes to an expert who gets you with TurboTax Expert Full Service.
Get the lucky man in here, huh?
Don't wear a trashy suit. Room rent free at theblackdog.com.
2024 was an eventful year in both finance and rap music. Just a year ago, when people mentioned the Met Gala, we assumed that they were referring to the annual charity fashion event in New York. Just 1 year later, we assumed that they're talking about lunchtime at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, where SBF, Diddy, and Luigi Mangione host one of the most exclusive parties in the world. It's one of the few parties where it's harder to leave than to get in, and who knows who'll be on the guest list next year. 2024 was a year of wars, elections, natural disasters. We saw solar eclipses, bridge collapses, and worried about mysterious drones. Jay-Z realized that he had reached 100 problems this year, and the less that we say about that, the better. 2024 got off to a dramatic start when on New Year's Day, Japan was shaken by a 7.5 magnitude earthquake, which collapsed buildings, caused fires, and triggered tsunami alerts, prompting orders to evacuate coastal areas of Japan. Later that month, we learned that while air travel is the safest form of mass transportation, that's only the case when the airplane's doors have been properly attached. Early in January, an Alaska Airlines flight was forced to make an emergency landing when a door plug fell off of the plane mid-air. Boeing's stock price fell 10% that day as investors worried that the planes had the build quality of a Cybertruck. Fortunately, none of the passengers or crew experienced serious injuries, but one YouTuber did get his fingers stuck in the door of the luggage compartment. Towards the end of January, a Delaware judge ruled against Elon Musk's $56 billion pay package, ruling that the share grant was a controller-conflicted transaction, as Tesla's directors were not independent, did not engage in an arm's-length negotiation, and that the shareholder vote was not fully informed of these conflicts. Following the decision, Musk re-domiciled Tesla in Texas and held a follow-up vote, asking investors to ratify the original options grant. While 70% of Tesla investors voted in Musk's favor, the court rejected this vote, saying that no Delaware court had ever reversed its judgment based on a stockholder vote that took place after a trial. This judgment will likely be appealed to the Delaware Supreme Court next year. 2024 was a big year for elections. 76 countries containing over half of the world's population held elections this year. In February, we saw elections in El Salvador, Pakistan, Finland, and Indonesia. More people voted this year than ever before. Germany's parliament voted in February to decriminalize cannabis, which is not expected to help the country's long-term decline in productivity, but it is expected to help grow its burgeoning tie-dye t-shirt industry. Everyone was talking about the weight loss drug Ozempic in 2024. Oprah Winfrey announced in February that she was taking the drug and stepped down from the board of Weight Watchers, sending the company's shares into the tailspin. Kate Moss famously said that nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. James Corden, on the other hand, discovered that sausages taste better than Ozempic. He told the press that he tried Ozempic and it didn't work. Now look, I know it's a bit of a mean joke, but it is James Corden, the guy who famously yelled at a waitress so much a few years ago that she needed therapy after serving him. I watched one of his carpool karaoke videos when researching this, and it was so awful that I possibly need therapy too to get over it. He had it coming. The most hyped product of the year, the Apple Vision Pro, was released in February too. It was a bit like Google Glass, which came out 15 years earlier, and flopped because people found it weird and creepy. So Apple decided to make something bigger, weirder, creepier, and more ridiculous. Social media was filled with images of people wearing it in public and behaving strangely. It was soon the most returned product in Apple history, and there are now rumors that it's about to be cancelled because, well, look at it. Before we go any further, let me tell you about this week's video sponsor, Delete Me. Delete Me is a subscription service that acts on your behalf to force data brokers to delete any of your personal data that they're storing to sell online. Data brokers collect huge amounts of personally identifiable information on individuals that can include social security numbers, birthdays, past and recent addresses, information about your relatives, and much more, which they then sell online to who knows who. Data brokers are legally required to delete any information they store on you if you ask. But unfortunately, there are hundreds of data brokers and they don't make it easy. It could take forever to contact them all. I used Delete Me to reach out to the hundreds of data brokers on my behalf to request the deletion of my personal data and to deal with any objections. I got a full report back showing where my data was removed from. With a yearly subscription, Delete Me tracks to make sure that your data is not re-added to their list. Get 20% off Delete Me US and UK consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/Boyle and use promo code BOYLE at checkout. In March, Donald Trump, who, spoiler alert, we'll hear more about later in this video, won a Supreme Court decision overturning a Colorado ruling that he was not eligible to run for president. The next day, Nikki Haley dropped out of the race, ceding the Republican nomination to Trump. After suppressing and murdering opponents, as is tradition in Russia, Vladimir Putin won 87.8% of the Russian vote, the highest ever result in Russia's post-Soviet history. Now, say what you will about the guy, he is popular. Not as popular as Kim Jong-un, but still quite popular. A cargo ship hit a bridge in Maryland in March, causing the entire 1.6-mile-long structure to collapse. Between this and the ship that blocked the Suez Canal a few years ago, these ships are getting completely out of control, and something needs to be done about them. Sam Bankman-Fried was sentenced to 25 years in prison in March after being convicted of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. With SBF out of the picture, politicians worried about who would fund their election campaigns. Later in the year, we learned that it would be other crypto guys who haven't been sent to prison yet. Tech layoffs were a big news story in March. 130,000 tech workers lost their jobs across 457 different companies this year. The viral video app TikTok was ordered to be sold by its Chinese parent company or be banned. And Donald Trump IPO'd his version of Twitter, Truth Social, on the same day that he announced the release of his Trump-branded Bible. Bibles were not the only presidential merch this year. Gold trainers and watches were released a few months later. In April, South Korea's opposition party won a landslide majority in the country's general election. This was a defeat for the sitting president, whose decline in popularity was blamed on a bag of spring onions. He made the oldest political mistake in the book by visiting a supermarket and saying that a bundle of spring onions were reasonably priced. Usually, politicians are tricked into making mistakes like this. A journalist will ask them how much a loaf of bread or a bottle of milk costs. They'll give the wrong price and be shown to be completely out of touch. This was the first time in political history that a politician set the very trap that they fell into. The same month, Donald Trump stood trial on criminal charges in a hush money case in New York, and NASA engineers managed to successfully repair and recode Voyager 1 from 15 billion miles away after a 5-month gap in not receiving data. Amazon's retail stores that claimed to use technology which allowed customers to just grab items from a store shelf and walk out without the need for checkouts was revealed to be just Indian workers watching CCTV footage, a reminder that AI isn't always what it seems. And do try to remember that when using one of those AI image generators, as you might be making a badly paid worker's day really tough when you ask for a particularly bizarre image. In May, President Biden announced that he was quadrupling U.S. tariffs on Chinese EVs from 25% to 100% to encourage Americans who were already not buying Chinese EVs to continue not buying them. And so far, that strategy appears to be working. In rap news, Kendrick Lamar's diss track, Not Like Us, became his fourth number one. Now, while I haven't gotten around to listening to it yet, it is one of my goals for 2025, unless something else comes up to distract me, but I'll see what I can do. In May, the Dow Jones Index hit 40,000 points for the first time ever, and Rishi Sunak announced a UK general election while getting soaked in a rainstorm. In June, people suddenly got excited about meme stocks once again as Keith Gill tweeted an image of a chair which signaled to GameStop investors that the short squeeze they've been waiting for years was about to arrive. After a bizarre YouTube live stream where he appeared to be dressed as Axl Rose covered in bandages, the stock price began to decline. It is still up 85% year to date, and people on Reddit still say that it's a great company. I'm starting to think that every one of my year-end videos going forward will have to contain an update on the price of GameStop stock, along with maybe the Tesla to Dogecoin ratio. In 20 years' time, people will have forgotten what these things are, but it'll just be a New Year's tradition, like singing Auld Lang Syne. No one knows what it's about, it's just a thing that people do. Towards the end of June, we saw the Trump-Biden debate where President Joe Biden spoke incoherently and appeared to repeatedly lose his train of thought. Viewers worried as they watched two men that you wouldn't trust with the remote control fight over who would lead the most powerful democracy in the world. In July, British voters turfed out the Conservatives after 14 years in power and 5 prime ministers. I've forgotten the name of the guy who won, but it was the other guy, the one who didn't get rained on back in May. 2024 was, it turns out, a year in which incumbent parties lost their majorities and either gave up power or held on to cobbled together coalitions. A lot of this was driven by voter frustration over inflation. Later in July, Donald Trump survived an assassination attempt while speaking at an open-air rally in Pennsylvania. He was shot and wounded in the right ear, and for a short while, Trump supporters wore ear bandages to signal their allegiance. Democratic voters spent a few weeks worrying that they would accidentally injure their ears and have to wear a bandage and be shunned by their friends and family.
It's knowing you've always done your part, so you can advance to life's good parts, confident and ready to the road ahead. It's us. Excellence takes drive, work, perseverance, time works raises your force. Prosperity raises your business. Cultivate best. Work with the best. Prosperity. How you lead your others. Prosperity.com/time.
Joe Biden took out the presidential race in July, quickly endorsing Kamala Harris, encouraging his party to unite behind her. All this right now with the Martin Salazar ongoing Harry Trump, all of Page Jr. appeared to dumping and Democrats in the park, which is found on the roadside, and Trump is now ordering for dinner. Apparently this song will take a whole recipe that confused that. Bears It's the end of the moment. A series of videos began to spread on TikTok, which influencers claimed that people would draw large sums of money from ATM machines by depositing checks for money people don't actually have, and then withdrawing a portion of those funds before they realize. They call this making more money glitch, but it never really is later than individual checkbook. There was a second assassination attempt against Donald Trump in September. The assassin hid in bushes at a golf course wearing a t-shirt with Michael McClellan's disguise. You have to be impressed by Trump's street smarts, because after this event, he was rarely seen on stage with alcohol in the future. The president regularly emphasized the opportunity on stage to draw the microphone. In October, we saw the Trump House debate, which the two candidates took away from their privilege of to discuss all the right issues facing America. They're eating the dogs, people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. After the debate, the media discussed whether humans were actually eating the dogs and cats in Springfield. It turned out that most of the important picture here was not in any way translated to the most in November, Sean John Combs was arrested on charges of behavior like the Tate brothers and possession of many words of close living. His punishment was to be locked up in someone freed. He's alleged of slut showering 3 years ago. Caroline Ellison, a fraudster and star witness of the FTX case, was sentenced to 2 years in prison this November. This is far from the woods where she and her kind of alcohol production Internet forum moderator Elon Musk was unanimously supporting Donald Trump in the U.S. elections, spending over $250 million on the election. The Trump winning November, Musk was reportedly later that month, he ran the funds of the Hillary 2024 surprise nominations and collaborated with other two members to release the gasoline cover version of the song. I'd strongly advise against listening to it. I try to describe it to you because it depends on my reason to preserve my opinion. The biggest incident of the year came in November when crypto records and sentencing in prison over 2016 Bitcoin. This is, of course, a huge loss to the crypto community. Russell finally appeared on the page everything happened last month, announcing that she would be separate video messages on Cameo before she was the president. Here, this video is equivalent to 4 cases that I won't lie. The president, for example, I saw the president campground, which I never felt to Mark Schwell, no matter how much he was to pay, but they dropped me to my birthday on Monday. Over his birthday days, not days, and how he would make for his own respect. In December, the hot tour around the Hills has eventually podcasters in the world pretty much overnight after Miles intuition take them. She managed to impress the rising on quality turned to just a viral moment on podcast, hangout group on Crypto Snap, and she launched Celebrity Coin, which is a crypto token that claims money to pay brokers like it's just a scam. According to news reports, some hot tour coin investors lost as much as $70,000 on their real estate investments. Now, I can't help but feel that if you lost money on the hot tour coin, you should put against your many of your banking savings and trust the person who experiences all there is. Otherwise, things just aren't going to work out. Other big news in December was the online interference on the Pendulum. We learned from these stocks a few years ago. Stock prices can rise due to bankruptcy, so it makes good financial sense to resuscitate. Today, recent decades, China appeared to be catching up to the United States, and people wondered if China's autocratic model worked better for economic growth than the sometimes chaotic U.S. diplomatic model. China's nominal GDP has fallen from about three-quarters of the size of America in 2021 to two-thirds today. Let me finish up by thanking you guys for watching the videos this year. Really enjoyed making them. I hope that you have a great 2024 and the 2025 is even better. If you enjoyed this video, you should watch my video on today. Don't forget to check out our sponsor, Tony Blue, using the link in the description. See you in the next video. Bye.
Are you the kind of person who knows things? Things like you can get a domain from Squarespace, not just a website? Well, now you are that person, because now you definitely know you can get a domain from Squarespace. Something like whisperingboom.com for your silent retreat, or whisperingboom.com for your shouting retreat. Whatever your dream, the Squarespace domain and website brings it to life, all in one place. Get yours before it's gone with offer code MAKEITREAL for 10% off your domain or website. Terms and conditions apply.
HGTV has taken over the iconic Bachelor Ranch. They thought making the whole thing was hard. Just wait till they have to get my Channel 8 show.
Bachelor Nation Takeover. Special series tomorrow night at 8 on HGTV.
Because I'm committed to showing up for her. I trust quality products from the fans and always show up for them. From all the right parts, that advances to life's right parts.
U.S. consumers bought just under 60 million new cars in 2024, which is 2.2% more than the prior year, and the new sales record since the pandemic. Most automakers didn't have the same adjustment to slowing demand for EVs and focused on their core business in the United States on gasoline-powered trucks and SUVs. The American car market continues to be dominated by larger, heavier cars, where demand for SUVs has grown hugely over the last 50 years. Brands like Toyota and Ford have delivered on growing demand for hybrids in recent years. Mazda saw the biggest gains with sales up nearly 17% in the United States, where they sold more cars in 2024 than ever before. Other top performers were Honda and Mercedes-Benz. The best-selling vehicle in the United States was once again the Ford F-Series truck, followed by the Chevy Silverado and then the Toyota RAV4. This is no surprise, as the F-Series has been the best-selling truck in the United States for 47 years and the best-selling vehicle of any kind in the U.S. for 42 years. General Motors reported their best year of U.S. sales since the pandemic, as lower industry is highly inventory and dealer incentives persuaded shoppers to buy. The worst performers in terms of sales in 2024 is Stellantis, followed by Tesla. Despite Tesla's selling price rising nearly 70% in 2024, the number of vehicles they sold fell by 1%. This was their first sales decline in more than a decade, and it came in the year when the luxury truck was introduced, which is supposed to be more in line with American vehicle purchasing trends than the sedans that have been selling until now. This decline in sales for a company priced for extreme growth indicates that investors may be pricing in growth that's unlikely to occur. In recent years, Tesla investors have fluctuated more sales figures, focusing instead on the eventual development of robo-taxis, mobile solar roofs, battery business, marketing, and sports cars, all of which are growing next year. Stellantis, which is made up of 40 automotive brands, was formed by a merger between Chrysler and Fusion Citroën. The company's revenues have been hit by weak demand, Chinese competition, and regulatory uncertainty around electric vehicles. They missed analyst expectations, warned on profits on the CEO led early last month. Reflecting these difficulties, the stock fell by more than 40% in 2024. Stellantis' profits are largely driven by the fact that they raised prices in the last 2-year period, focusing on high-end models, pricing some new Jeeps more than $100,000, which most vehicle sales today. Stellantis today has some of the highest inventories of vehicles on dealer lots, as they are exposed to customers recently not selling. Dodge, which was once famed for its V8 engines, has just begun to build electric vehicles. While Architectural Digest raved about the new electric muscle cars, automotive journalists were less positive. I'm not sure how them Duke boys would feel about paying $70,000 for a car that's slower than a cheaper Tesla Model 3, which also has more range. On the plus side, the Charger is a great name for an EV, and it does have speakers where the exhaust pipe should be, so that you can still annoy your neighbors revving up your EV. Over the summer, Jaguar entirely halted production of all of their cars, which were not selling very well, so that they could fully electrify the brand by 2025. In November, they unveiled a new brand identity, which drew a lot of press and switched the design focus from classic British heritage to a more colourful and controversial look. Their advertising campaign used the slogan "Copy Nothing," and they unveiled a new logo which appeared to be copying the Dyson vacuum cleaner logo. I guess both firms are now in the electric appliance business. Jaguar later revealed a concept car, the Type 00, which appears to have been designed using Microsoft Paint and has no rear window, but at least it still has wheels for now. Auto manufacturers stepped up their R&D spend massively over the last 10 years, spending tens of billions of dollars developing electric vehicles and self-driving technologies, with little to no short to medium-term returns on their investments. As the growth in demand for EVs appears to be waning, is electrification killing the car industry? Before we dig into that, let me tell you about this week's video sponsor, Henson Shaving. Henson is on a mission to change shaving for the better, focusing on a skin-friendly shave that eliminates irritation, razor burn, and ingrown hairs. They're addressing the problems that, according to a recent study, 2/3 of men expect when they shave. My whole life, I've used multi-blade cartridge razors, so I was quite surprised by the Henson razor when it arrived a few weeks ago, as it reminds me of the razor my father used, with none of the gimmicks of modern multi-blade razors, which are hard to clean and can trap bacteria. Since switching to a Henson razor, I experience less irritation and bumps. The Henson uses standard double-edged blades, which cost pennies a piece, and the handle is precision machined in Canada. There's no plastic involved at all with this razor, not even in the packaging, which helps reduce the billions of plastic disposables thrown in landfills every year. The blade is held firmly and doesn't flex or bend like other ones do, giving you greater control and less skin irritation. It's available in 5 different colors. My favorites are aircraft aluminum and copper. Click on the link in the video description and use my discount code BOILE to checkout to get a free shave cream with the purchase of a Henson razor. The pace of US car sales picked up towards the end of 2024 as falling interest rates and improved dealer inventories attracted shoppers. There was a lot of talk after the US election that EV buyers would rush out to take advantage of the Biden-era electric vehicle tax credit, which are worth up to $7,500 before they possibly go away, as Trump promised to eliminate these incentives on the campaign trail. There was a small pop in EV sales in December, with General Motors doing quite well. But if that's what a rush looks like, what will sales be like without the government incentives in place? Even with the tax incentives, Boston Consulting Group reported earlier this year that automakers lose roughly $6,000 on every EV they sell in America. Last year, Rivian revealed that it lost $33,000 on every truck they sold. Around the same time, Lucid reported that they lost $338,000 on each car sold. The problem for both of these companies is that they're selling in the luxury vehicle segment and EV buyers want more affordable cars. The biggest success in EV adoption globally has, of course, been Norway, where 90% of new sales are electric. This was achieved through massive government incentives where EV subsidies make up 2% of Norway's national budget. New electric vehicles in Norway are exempt from several taxes, including a 25% value-added tax on cars. According to the IER, an equivalent ICE vehicle in Norway would be subject to $27,000 in various taxes that are avoided by buying an EV. For that reason, it's no surprise how many EVs are sold. Electric cars were additionally made exempt from any road or ferry tolls and were allowed to drive in bus lanes. A number of these incentives have been reduced over time, partially because of complaints that they disproportionately benefit the wealthy who can afford EVs. Norway was able to afford to spend billions a year on EV subsidies like this because they have the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, funded by revenue from their oil and gas production. With such high EV adoption, all of the important EV infrastructure has been installed in Norway, making the cars extremely convenient there. According to Vox, one of the negative side effects of the EV subsidies in Norway is that they've made driving so cheap that fewer people use public transportation, bicycles, or walk. Norway today has one of the lowest rates of public transportation usage in Europe and a higher car ownership rate than Denmark and Sweden, its Scandinavian neighbours. EV subsidies have been found to really move the needle. In Germany, electric vehicle sales dropped almost 40% last year when the German government ended its €6,000 EV subsidy. In 2022, Sweden eliminated a number of EV subsidies, which resulted in a 20% drop in electric vehicle sales. A huge part of the transition to electric vehicles globally is driven by government policy rather than customer demand. And even with government incentives in place, automakers are still generally losing money building these cars. A huge problem affecting the demand for new EVs is the terrible depreciation buyers are hit with. I made a video last year on how many EVs have more than halved in value over their first year of ownership. It'll take quite a while to recover that kind of loss with fuel savings. In the UK, there was a huge surge in EV sales in December, when sales of battery-powered cars jumped around 60% from a year earlier. The reason this happened is that under UK law, automakers are fined £15,000, which is around $19,000 per car, if 22% of their sales were not electric. Thus, they had to sell EVs at great discounts to avoid the fine. Despite the end-of-year surge, automakers still fell short of the 22% target, and the target for next year will be 28%. The required quota of electric vehicles to be sold in the UK ratchets up every year until 2035, when it reaches 100%. The British Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders told the press that the discounts needed to boost EV sales to hit last year's targets were unsustainable, so 2025 could be even worse for the industry. Last year, according to Bloomberg, only 1 in 10 private buyers in the UK chose an EV, with business and fleet customers driving the majority of the demand. Stellantis cited the UK EV mandate when it announced plans in November to stop manufacturing Vauxhall vans in the UK after 120 years of production. Nissan, who employ over 7,000 workers in the UK, said last November that the EV mandate risks undermining the business case for manufacturing cars in the UK. Ford, who laid off 800 British auto workers in November, blamed unprecedented regulatory and economic headwinds. So far, the British government is resisting pressure to weaken the EV mandate, but they may have to back down if it starts to impact employment. The change from ICE cars to EVs is mostly a minor one for consumers. The new cars serve the same purpose as the old ones did and mostly work the same other than having a huge screen on the dashboard to distract the driver. The major worry for EV buyers is whether they'll be convenient to charge and if they'll be as durable as an ICE vehicle. For manufacturers, the transition is much more complicated. All of the intellectual property that they've built up from decades of manufacturing mechanical cars loses its value when they move to building EVs. The firms have to shift from their background in mechanical engineering to software development and battery manufacturing, which might involve an entirely different workforce. If tailpipe emissions were the only thing that mattered to governments, they might push ahead with the change and just let customers buy EVs from China. But the auto industry employs 2.4 million Europeans and more than 4 million Americans. It's not just auto workers either. There are 13 million Europeans and a similar number of Americans who rely on the auto industry for employment, making various components that are part of the auto industry supply chain, repairing cars or selling spare parts and consumables. The workers who make car seats, door hinges, windshields, suspension components, and so on should be fine, as these are needed on EVs too. But the highest paid jobs have historically been in manufacturing engine and transmission components, and these workers and businesses won't be able to easily transition to making batteries and electric motors for EVs. It's an entirely different skill set. For this reason, governments are forced to weigh their commitments to workers and voters in their countries against their commitments to the Paris Climate Accord. In recent months, a number of major automakers have announced plans to slow their transition to electric vehicles. Volvo announced that they wouldn't move as quickly as planned to an all-EV lineup, and both Ford and General Motors said that they would delay the introduction of previously announced models. 5 years ago, Ford said that it would go almost completely electric in Europe by the end of the decade, but they're now walking back those plans. In November, they announced that they would be laying off another 4,000 workers in Europe, where the transition to EVs is losing traction industry-wide.
With Whoop, start improving your fitness from day one with real-time insights and guidance built around your goals. See where Whoop can take you.
Volkswagen and Stellantis have issued profit warnings in recent months, citing a broad slowdown in vehicle sales and that governments are pulling support for EV purchases. Volkswagen even announced that they plan to roll out plant closures in Germany for the first time in their history. General Motors, which has had a lot of success with EVs, has still lowered their planned EV production and said that they would delay the launch of the first Buick EV, which they have been planning. Overproduction has led Ford to announce that they're cancelling their planned all-electric three-row SUV, and that they will instead use the plant that they've been retooling to build F-Series Super Duty pickup truck. A lot of this turmoil stems from EV production growing faster than consumer demand, particularly in Europe, where governments are mandating a change. According to NPR, the slowdown in EV sales growth doesn't necessarily signal that EVs aren't coming. They argue that the question is about the pace of the journey, not the destination, making the case that the nature of any adoption curve is that new technologies catch on first with a tiny slice of tech geeks, the innovators. Then they reach the early adopters who will put up with some inconveniences and are willing to pay a little more for cool tech. The problem for EV manufacturers, according to NPR, is that mainstream buyers are much harder to win over. They point out that it took 20 years for hybrids to become mainstream. Right now, most car owners are happy with the existing technology and see no reason to make a change. It may still take some time to convince them, but this won't help now seeing both higher competition and lower overall market growth. GM, Ford, and Volkswagen have all said that they are committed to ramp up their EV business, but that the pace of consumer adoption might not be as fast as was previously expected. A big dilemma for politicians is that while they want cheaper EVs for environmental reasons, they don't want to undermine their domestic auto manufacturers or local employment by importing them from abroad. Governments so far are not backing down on their mandates, but they are generally not willing to see their manufacturing industries be wiped out by cheap Chinese imports. According to most auto analysts, EVs are still expected to eventually make up most of the global automotive fleet due to tightening environmental legislation around the world. While many big automakers are struggling to meet government targets due to lower than anticipated consumer demand, they are still lobbying governments to keep many of the requirements in place, but with more time for compliance and lower penalties for companies that don't meet the requirements. The reason that they want this is that they've invested billions of dollars in new facilities and don't want this investment to become worthless if the government's mandated demand goes away. A change in direction from governments would be extremely difficult for big businesses, as governments have encouraged companies to install things like charging infrastructure or to mine for minerals needed for batteries. If governments change direction, a lot of this investment could become worthless. According to the New York Times, 3 of America's largest automakers are strategizing on how to ask Donald Trump to not scrap the federal regulations that compel the industry to sell electric vehicles. While they don't love Biden's rules, they've already invested close to $150 billion into EV manufacturing and worry that if Trump made an abrupt change, they could lose out to automakers like Toyota and Mazda, who focused on traditional cars and hybrids. A big question for the coming years is whether governments will continue to subsidize EVs while they're still mostly being sold at a loss, even after the subsidies. Trump says that he won't, and while European governments seem more committed, their budgets are a lot tighter and they may not be able to afford the subsidies. While Norway was able to complete the transition to EVs and get all of the charging infrastructure in place, they did it at enormous cost, which they could afford due to their oil wealth. Other countries don't have that much money to throw at the problem. According to most estimates, the battery of an electric vehicle typically accounts for around 40% of the overall vehicle cost. This compares to ICE cars, where the engine makes up only around 10% of the value of the vehicle. It's not unreasonable to ask if a company is in the EV business if they don't make their own batteries. China is the world's leading producer of EV batteries, accounting for 75% of battery cell manufacturing capacity. China also produces and refines over half of the world's lithium, cobalt, and graphite. China's BYD started out making batteries for mobile phones and only later moved to building EVs. They were, after all, already building the most complicated components. Most manufacturers outside of China don't make their own batteries. Tesla, for example, buys most of its battery cells from suppliers like CATL and Panasonic. They have, however, made efforts to produce their own 4680 battery cells, which are currently only used in the Cybertruck, a low-volume vehicle. Northvolt was founded in 2016 with the goal of manufacturing EV batteries in Europe and selling them to European automakers. It quickly became the symbol of Europe's green ambitions and later its failing. Northvolt took in around $13 billion in debt and equity financing since its founding. Last year, they manufactured less than 1% of the batteries they were theoretically capable of producing and ended up filing for bankruptcy in November after burning through billions of dollars in investment they raised from firms like Volkswagen and Goldman Sachs. Northvolt quickly transformed from Europe's best shot at local battery production to a company struggling to survive due to production difficulties, the loss of BMW as a major customer and a lack of funding. Pure EV companies like Lucid and Rivian have been struggling despite building vehicles that are praised by their owners. Lion Electric, a Canadian electric bus manufacturer, received almost $50 million in taxpayer subsidies before filing for bankruptcy, resulting in the complete loss of those public funds. Some of the slowdowns in sales at Tesla has been blamed on Elon Musk's involvement in politics, which might be pushing some buyers away who don't share his political views. While 1/3 of EVs sold in America are sold in California, a left-leaning state, CNN found that many of the reasons people choose an EV are unrelated to politics, and a lot of conservatives do buy electric vehicles. EV buyers are often the same people who upgrade their computer and mobile phone every year because they love new technology. EV buyers are driven by things like brand status, charging station availability, a desire to own the newest technology, and of course, incentives like rebates. According to LendingTree, Tesla buyers are among the most indebted new car buyers, and they take out the longest duration car loans to finance the purchase.
Our experience with Inspire 11 has just been amazing. Partnering with Inspire 11, the level of talent is incredibly high.
Inspire 11 has helped us achieve all our goals.
It's not just one individual at Inspire 11. They're all really good.
This is AI built to improve.
It is possible that the slowdown in sales at Tesla is less related to politics and is driven instead by increased competition in the EV space and slowing demand from mainstream buyers who are happy with the existing technology. According to Ernst & Young, fewer buyers are considering buying an EV today than were considering one a year ago. A recent Wall Street Journal article argues that 2025 may be the year that net zero dies as voters lose patience with the project and grow less shy about saying so. Some of that can already be seen in recent election results around the world. The author argues that Britain's Labour Party has already started to backtrack on its green electricity pledges and may be getting cold feet about the EV mandate now that job losses are starting to mount in the domestic auto industry. He says that the climate policies pursued by Angela Merkel and her successor Olaf Scholz are at the root of Germany's slowdown, and the politician likely to replace Scholz promises a significant rethinking of energy and climate policy. If German voters do step back from net zero, the rest of the EU is unlikely to be far behind. The reason that voters have grown tired of net zero is that they were promised that the transition could happen with no noticeable dent to prosperity or reduction in living standards, which no longer appears to be true. While some jobs are disappearing, the green jobs that were supposed to replace them are not materializing in Europe. France's government recently suggested that meeting its net zero targets would require households to tolerate lower temperatures inside their homes during the winter and to travel less on holidays, none of which is particularly surprising. The article says that the main reason net zero might die in 2025 is because of how destructive the policies have been on the auto industry, a huge employer in Europe. It seems to me that we're likely to see significant turmoil in the auto industry in the coming years, where historic brands like Jaguar and Dodge could disappear if they botch the transition to electric vehicles by alienating their existing customers without convincing a new audience to buy their new product. The biggest problem for the auto industry might be the geopolitical tensions between the US, Europe, and China. Automakers may struggle to deal with changing environmental regulations, new trade rules, tariffs, restrictions on tech transfers, and a general reversal of globalization. If you enjoyed today's video, you should watch my year-end video next, where I went through the biggest news events of 2024. Don't forget to check out our sponsor, Henson Shaving, using the link in the description, and see you in the next video. Bye.
The place within it.
Give me a moment.
I've dreamed of it before.
I'm Sue Bird. I am a triathlon pro athlete, and Symetra is still trying to help me find a hobby in retirement. Today, it's ice hockey. I've never played hockey before. I have skates and hockey skates, so at least I got that going for me, but never with all the accoutrement.
How different is scoring a goal in hockey from scoring a three-pointer in basketball?
I'm going to tell you in about 5 minutes.
I'm Miller Knight, captain of Seattle Torrent.
You believe in students. We believe in you. Great teachers are made at WGU. Learn more at wgu.edu.
I'm not an astronaut.
I'm not an astronaut.
You're a great scientist. You'll figure it out. The world is counting on you.
No, I'm not an alien.
Last year, the Federal Trade Commission reported that consumer losses to fraud had grown 30%. The prior year reports of fraud had grown 16.3%. Apparently, the biggest losses were to investment scams, including cryptocurrency schemes. Younger adults in their 20s reported losing money more frequently than older adults. But when older adults did lose money, they lost a lot more. And that makes sense, as older adults tend to be wealthier, but hopefully a bit wiser. It's not just an issue in the United States either. UK banks reported a large increase in fraud in 2022, with much of it originating online. When I interviewed Zeke Fox a few weeks ago, he described how he had initially resisted looking into crypto fraud, as he felt that a journalist spending time investigating a crypto scam was like a restaurant critic writing a review on a new Taco Bell that had just opened up. When he started investigating, he quickly
Hello, this is Shanoa. Now, regarding your question, you want to know if both you and your childhood friend... What?
or even high status to scam people. It's hard to go online without being pitched scam content about using ChatGPT to trade stocks or an endless variety of passive income schemes that are extremely unlikely to actually work out for you. This summer, an AP analysis found that fraudsters potentially stole more than $280 billion in pandemic relief funding. Criminals and gangs grabbed some of the money, but so did a U.S. soldier in Georgia, the pastors of a defunct church in Texas, a former state lawmaker in Missouri, and a roofing contractor in Montana. The fraud was widespread. Most of the theft was simple and fairly obvious. Scammers used the identities of dead people and federal prisoners to get unemployment checks, often collecting them in multiple states. The Small Business Administration estimates fraud in 2 of their programs at over $100 billion. The names of celebrities, entertainers, and CEOs can be found on the list of those charged. The SBA are overwhelmed with investigations and say that they're dealing with a backlog of more than 80,000 actionable fraud leads, which is close to 100 years' worth of investigative work. The disturbing thing about the story is how many ordinary people decided to turn to fraud during the pandemic. The hedge fund manager Jim Chanos argues that we're living through a golden age of fraud. He believes that the fraud cycle follows the business and financial cycle, and that at market peaks, there's the most fraud going on in an economy, only exposed once there's a down.
Hello, this is Shanoa. Now, regarding your question, you want to know between Michael and Vince who you should give another chance, since both of them have betrayed you and you're unsure about who you should lean more towards. Your reading ended up being pretty interesting. For this one, I'll start in the middle because it's pretty interesting about the dynamic going on. Ace of Pentacles is the representation of where you're currently at and where you should be right now. It's signaling that you should be focusing on your businesses, your work, and building yourself up, because right now you're stuck between making a major change represented by Death to the left, which this is mainly talking about meeting someone new or striking out to see different people, maybe mingling with people you're not used to or people you wouldn't normally try to date or get to know better. And on the other side of that spectrum is the King of Pentacles, which, with it being reversed, this would represent Mike and Vince. It shows that they are relatively untrustworthy and not as stable as you'd like. So right now, it's explaining that your current dynamic, you are stuck between completely changing your taste in a significant other or putting time into either of them, because it's essentially rating that you're going to get about the same thing from both of them because they're both relatively untrustworthy in their own ways. But it's mostly recommending that you just focus on yourself, focus on your work, and build yourself up from there. Because I do feel like when your personal situation improves, especially with finances and the networking that comes with that, you will find that your options open up significantly from where you are now. So if you want to talk about this in detail, as far as what other options will be in store for you if you focus on your own businesses, you can give me a call or send me a message.
Are at best misrepresented and at worst completely fabricated to prey on the financially desperate. The most likely outcome when you sign up for any of these courses is that you learn nothing and be down the thousands of dollars that you spend on the course fees. Some of them offer access to their stock pitch behind a paywall, which is unlicensed financial advice, despite what their disclaimers might say. And I have been told that the SEC is investigating this sort of thing right now. The type of things that influencers pitch as being passive income are usually either investment income or some form of self-employment. To make money investing, you usually need money to start with. And if it's going to replace your job, you should probably start with over $1 million. So the best way to earn a passive income through investment is, if you're young, to choose your parents wisely. To describe being self-employed as earning passive income is so ridiculous that it barely seems worth addressing. Small business owners work hard, and how hard they work might even surprise some of you. A survey from New York Enterprise Report found that small business owners work twice the hours of the average wage earner. Building a business is not passive income, and most founders earn nothing in the first year of their startup, and the majority of small businesses fail in their first year. It's not easy, and it shouldn't be represented as such. A recent video by Tom Nicholas argued that a lot of today's passive income scams can be traced back to the publication of Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, in 2007. The book came out right as the financial crisis was hitting and spent 4 years on the New York Times bestseller list, was translated into 40 languages, and sold over 2 million copies. It was influential. While Ferriss didn't pitch the get-rich-quick scheme, it can be argued that he pitched the get-rich-easy scheme. It was right there in the title. You only needed to work 4 hours a week if you followed his recipe for success. The financial crisis put a lot of people out of work, and the jobs that were lost in the middle-income roles, which people often replace with lower-paid service sector jobs and side hustles. The 4-hour work week really spoke to this group, who felt that they could possibly earn more money while working fewer hours. Ferriss pitched that people could convince their employers to let them work from home and then earn passive income through dropshipping, affiliate marketing, retail arbitrage, or by teaching courses. The same list of passive income strategies being pitched by online scammers today. He was criticized at the time for advising people to become fake experts, and the New York Times noted that Ferriss spent far more than 4 hours a week blogging and promoting his book. Tim Ferriss made his first big money selling Britain.
Hercules 20-volt brushless power tools are as good as the best for a whole lot less, only at Harbor Freight.
At Raising Cane's, we focus on making the most grateful chicken finger meal, getting them right every time.
At WGU, flexibility is our foundation. With a learning model that lets you set your own schedule, one-on-one mentorship, and flat-rate tuition, WGU helps you become a great teacher on your terms. Learn more at WGU.edu.
We've all heard the cliche, you have to love yourself first before you can love someone else. And maybe part of that's true. You've done the journey, but face it, it's summer. We all want a special someone to spend our time with. So there's no need to waste time getting the answers. That's where our keen psyche comes. Our advisors are well equipped to get you directly to the answers you need. And not just that, you're
free pills on the internet or nutritional supplements while working a full-time job. He was working 80 hours a week according to a profile on the Princeton University website. Once the 4-hour work week took off, he sold the brain pill business. I guess he got the passive income and mostly makes his money now through book sales and as a self-help guru. A lot of his ideas are based on the Pareto principle, which states that for many outcomes, roughly 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes. He argued that you only needed to focus on the most important levers and could ignore or outsource most of your work, which is wasted effort anyhow. Of course, he left out that you only know after the event which of the seeds you planted and didn't grow. Most people are not wasting most of their workday on unnecessary activity. If only 20% of an engineer's decisions turn out to be valuable, it doesn't mean that they foolishly decided to waste 80% of their time designing products that don't work. You sometimes have to do the stuff that doesn't work in order to find the stuff that does. Ferris's pitch in the 4-Hour Workweek was that you could create an automated vehicle for generating cash without consuming much time. This idea provided a lot of the inspiration to the passive income scammers, who, unable to generate passive income for themselves, decided to become big experts at what you might then call entrepreneurs, selling get-rich-quick schemes to the public with the aid of a printed Lamborghini and bundles of fake cash that can be bought on Amazon. There were many effects of the financial crisis of 2007-2008. It led to the Occupy Wall Street movement and the Tea Party movement. Both of these were driven by the idea that everything was rigged and rigged in someone else's favor. People were angry about the unfair nature of the bailouts, and the rise of things like cryptocurrencies and meme stocks can be traced back to the anger the public felt in the wake of the credit crunch. Unfortunately, putting money into many of these alternative investments led to the public being harmed once again, as insiders claimed up. Jim Chanos argued in a recent interview that aggressive accounting by companies is at an all-time high. In particular, he highlighted abuses by Silicon Valley companies releasing accounts with tens of pages of adjustments, which they highlight instead of the GAAP numbers. Many of these companies use share-based compensation in order to hide how unprofitable they actually are, by claiming that employee compensation is not an expense. Many of these companies will issue press releases saying that they're now profitable on an adjusted basis, but when you dig into their accounts, it's clear that they're still losing money. Many of the worst offenders on this front are the most popular stocks amongst retail investors and the most promoted by influencers on YouTube.
Hello, this is Shanoa. Now, regarding your question, you want to know if he will get back together with you. Going by your cards, the Lover shows that he definitely has a desire to reunite with you and see if things can work between the two of you. However, the last two cards do serve as a bit of a warning. Ace of Wands shows that primarily his reasons for coming back to you do seem to mostly be lust-driven, sexual in nature. And Seven of Swords does allude to him most likely having something else going in the background, whether he's talking to someone else or has a plan to keep another girl on standby. Now, if you want further information about what the future holds between the two of you, since I do see the both of you getting back together, but I do think you need more information on what kind of problems will most likely occur, you can give me a call or send me a message. Hey, where have you been? Enjoy your weekend. The pollen just took flight here, so I sound super chopped. I feel it in my throat. I'm getting mogged by flower cum. Playing Final Fantasy 14? Oh my god. You're not a Lalafell, are you? Do I play? No. The girl in the cult tried to get me to play. I played for like a month or two, but I didn't ever subscribe. But I made a few characters. You know, the short people, the hobbits for Final Fantasy. You knew what I was talking about. Hey, what kind of character do you have? The one with the tail. So I'm guessing that would be an aura. An aura. Holy God, I need allergy meds. This is going to be a problem. Like right on March 1st. There's just pollen everywhere. Take a really hot wet cloth and place it over my eyes. I don't think I ever did it over my eyes. I know it helped with my neck. I've never tried the eyes. Eyes and nose. Well, I know when I had access to longer baths, I would basically like live underwater during this time. The water would be super hot. I'd just chill in there like all evening. Oh my God. Oh, the Mikode cat people. Yeah. Of course. I should have known. Well, I'm very boring, so I mainly just played a human. I made some Lalafels, but I basically only played a human. I called her Shanoa Blackwood. She was like a white woman with black blonde hair or something. She was really cute. But I didn't get to talk to anybody because I didn't have a subscription. But I had like at least like one dude follow me around. R did it again. What'd they do? Messages. Oh, do tell. I like some good romantic tension. Almost done with Stormblood. You must have to put a bunch of hours into that kind of stuff. How far did I get? I think I got as far as when you meet the mysterious Catwoman, like very early in the quest, and then that's when I'm like, I just don't have time. I just don't have time to do all that. I'd do it if I had a play group, but heck no, it's just too late for me. The only friend I do have who plays has like several basically maxed out accounts, and he likes to be like a dancer in some club where they do freaky stuff. Hey, cutscene.
Right now, and instead reflect its discovery as some of the fraud has disappeared over the last year, as in general economies grow faster and life is more pleasant the more that individuals can trust each other. If you found today's video interesting, you should watch this one on Pandemic Relief Fraud now.
At Planet Fitness, there's strength in numbers. The number of different workouts to do. Different clubs to do it in. Friends to do it with. Looking good, everybody.
Yeah, we are.
And the number of ways to recover from it all. And it all adds up to one membership. The Planet Fitness Black Card. Access any location, bring a friend anytime, and recover in the Black Card spa.
One more, everybody.
We're all strong on this planet. Planet Fitness.
Round one, ready?
Hmm.
Round one. Ready?
Exo. Hello, this is Shanoa. Now, regarding your question, you want to know if this person who you haven't been in contact lately with, if they will reach out to you again. And you want to know if he'll be the one to contact you first, or will you have to take the first step? Going by the cards that you got, the Star being in reverse, as well as the Knight of Cups being in reverse, shows that there isn't a lot of intention on his side to reach out right now, even though he would like to talk to you and possibly reconnect in a meaningful way. It seems like there's something that's impeding him from really taking those crucial steps. So whether it's one of your situations, either you or his, or maybe something else going on in his life, that does seem to be in the way. The final card, being Ace of Wands, does show that pretty soon, within the next week, he will get more of an initiative to do something. So it does seem that when it comes to making contact with him again, he will be the one to make the first step. So I don't think you need to worry about you having to do anything in particular. You can just keep doing what you've been doing. So if you want further information about what the future holds between the two of you, as well as your compatibility with each other, you can give me a call or send me a message. Mm. Huh. Oh my god.遅いですね。That was a pretty good pickup. Really good pickup. Don't need more good.
Ready?
Fuck. Hey, you're back? Mini boss. Oh my god, that's a humongous booty. Good lord. Kevin and Heidi had a big argument today, and he has since blocked her calls and told her, does he feel guilty, and will he reach out to her again soon? Oh no, my Canadian woman just messaged me. Oh my god. Hello, this is Shanoa. Now, regarding your question, you mainly want to know if this situation is over or is there room for things to repair between these two people. Going by the cards, the world being in reverse shows that while this connection does seem to have reached fruition, there also doesn't seem to be a way to really get back to its prime state. I don't think that this is necessarily an absolute no-go in terms of both of them reconnecting, but it does show that trying to chase what has already happened between the two would be extremely erroneous. Three of Pentacles being in reverse also shows that both of these parties would not really work that well together in terms of fixing whatever issues there are between each other. So I would definitely keep my eye on how both sides are voicing their complaints and their emotions right now. Six of Wands being upright shows that there still is a chance for them to have somewhat of an amicable relationship to each other. But I do think that if they get fixated on trying to chase what's already been lost between them, then it will lead to both parties being very disappointed. So if you want further information on what the future holds between these two, as well as their compatibility with each other, you can give me a call or send me a message. Go
I didn't end up finishing that test yesterday because there was too many questions. It was like in the process of like making stuff for a show today, so I had no time. But I'll let you know what my test results are. And as far as my question, thanks for answering it earlier. You know, you're the only one that actually gave me. I feel like you gave me the most like. I don't know. I feel like me and you were seeing eye to eye with the answer that you gave regarding like who I should choose, Mike or Vince. Everybody else said to choose Vince. I don't know why. Not one friggin' advisor said to choose Mike. But what's funny is that like one of the advisors who's commented on my like questions before about Mike, she was always telling me like, oh, Mike's your twin flame and like I see a reconnection soon and like you should give him another chance and blah blah blah. And then it's like when you put another person in the equation, not one person said to choose Mike. That's crazy. One lady said that Mike's my twin flame and Vince is my soulmate, which honestly, between the two, it sucks because I don't trust either one of them. But I feel like Vince was more like, if I were to choose somebody to trust again, it would probably be Vince. I felt like I had more comfort with him because he let his guard down and like we were, you know, he He wasn't a mystery like Mike was. Like everything about I didn't end up finishing that test yesterday because there was too many questions. I was like in the process of like making stuff for a show today, so I had no time. But I'll let you know what my test results are. And as far as my question, thanks for answering it earlier. You know, you're the only one that actually gave me. I feel like you gave me the most like. I don't know. I feel like me and you were seeing eye to eye with this the answer that you gave regarding like who I should choose, Mike or Vince. Everybody else said to choose Vince. I don't know why. Not one friggin' advisor said to choose Mike. But what's funny is that like one of the advisors who's commented on my like questions before about Mike, she was always telling me like, oh, Mike's your twin flame and like I see a reconnection soon and like you should give him another chance and blah blah blah. And then it's like when you put another person in the equation, not one person said to choose Mike. That's crazy. One lady said that Mike's my twin flame and Vince is my soulmate, which honestly between the two it sucks because I don't trust either one of them. But I feel like Vince was more like if I were to choose somebody to trust again, it would probably be Vince. I felt like I had more comfort with him because he let his guard down and like we were, you know, he wasn't a mystery like Mike was. Like everything about Mike made me feel on edge. Like with Vince, I actually trusted him, even though he did a lot of messed up stuff up until the end when he cheated on me. Mike like full on pursued somebody for like a good month behind my back. It was like Mike full on like I gave him space and he went and like was talking to some other girl behind my back. With Vince, it's like this girl just came out of nowhere. It happened like so quickly. I found out about it right away because like I lived with him and whatever. Guys aren't really that smart in hiding stuff, but even with Mike, like he always like threatened like, oh, like are you like do I need to see someone else for you to give me space and blah blah blah. So like he was hinting these things like well before he came clean about it. So I know he was like talking to this girl before. And yeah, it's messed up because both guys ended up screwing me over near the end to go be with someone else. And Vince ended up having the worst karma after. Like the guy is in jail right now because of this girl. Okay, he's been on and off with her for 3 years now since me and him broke up. And jail has not been doing him well because the other day he got beat up so badly he ended up in the hospital. And I've always been there for him. And even today I actually went to go see him at the hospital. I wasn't able to stay long because when you're in the jail you can't have visitors. So, but like he was so happy to see me, and it's like, I don't know. I feel like I'm always gonna have ties to Vince. But the sexual chemistry just wasn't there. It's like the chemistry I had with Mike, sexually, I wish I had with Vince. Because Vince was like good with everything else, you know? And I think like Vince feels the same way about the girl that he's been pursuing. He has good chemistry sexually with her, but everything else he wishes like she had my qualities. Even though Vince was damaged, you know, he went from relationship to relationship. And like my relationship with him was not easy. Like, don't get me wrong, I went through hell and back with that guy. But like there was just always something like a part of him that I always loved unconditionally. It's weird. with Mike, it's like Mike hurt me so much. They both hurt me really bad, but Mike hurt me like way worse, or like in similar ways, but like in half the time that Vince did. And when someone said, "Oh, Mike's your twin flame and Vince is your soulmate," it's like, okay, who do I choose? Either one or neither of them? Because it seems like you were kind of getting at to choose neither of them, and like I'm on the right path as far as like, you know, focusing on my business, my career, like networking and stuff, and like you'll meet somebody, you're in a good place right now, and I think like either one would be no good for you because they're both not trustworthy. They both broke my trust. But it's like, it just kind of kills me how no one chose Mike. Like, not one person said to go with Mike. And I don't know why. I don't know why Vince is any better than Mike, because they both did me dirty. But I reached out to you because I'm like, I want to go a little bit like into this and see like what makes Vince any better than Mike. I don't know. I don't think me and Vince are going to ever rekindle things. Like, he's probably going to get out of jail and reconnect with this girl. It's just, for either one of them, for me to rebuild something, like, trust is not something that you can easily rebuild. Like, it would definitely take time. And I don't think I could ever fully trust either one of them. It's something, it seems like it would be easier just to start something with someone. And I don't even know if I'm in a position to even choose anybody, because to be honest with you, I feel like Mike hasn't come back around, but I know he will, just the same way Vince did. Because both guys ended up leaving me to go be with someone else. And I know if things didn't work out with Vince's girl, and he always comes to me when times are tough, what makes Mike any different? Mike just hasn't had his like awakening yet with this girl, or like his situation, because he's a lot younger. I feel like Vince has been through a lot more with this girl, and just like overall in the past 3 years we've had apart, where like he's always, and it's crazy because when I first met Mike, and like anytime I had issues with Mike, Vince was always there for me. Even though he was dating this girl, like whenever I wanted Mike to be there for me, Vince always ended up like showing up, or like I would call Vince out of comfort. And he was always like there. He even told me not to fucking pursue this guy. Because he's like, Lex, he's a kid, blah, blah, blah. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you know, like I feel like we had a friendship, even if things didn't work out between us, which sucks because me and Vince can never just like have a friendship because there's history there, you know? But I don't know. I don't know what to do. Like, just seeing him today really made me really sad and emotional. And like, he's always there when, like, he always comes in my life when I need him, whenever Mike's not there. And it's like, I don't even think Mike's going to come around again and like fight for me. And I feel like it's not going to be genuine when he does. Because some people said, oh, he'd come back around, he'd test the waters, but he'd still keep that other girl and then weigh his options. And then if he feels like, you know, things are going good with you, then he'll decide to end things with her.
The idea that this was going to be a major crisis, even pre-2008. There was not news stories about boomers undersaving for retirement if they were spending too much in their younger days, and you would have needed the stock market to triple in order to basically make people's retirement homes. And you know what? That's exactly what happened. That's why there's so much political pressure to keep the stock market up, was to avoid a massive retirement crisis that would have not only strained Social Security, but would have just had a variety of other problems. But in order to basically save the elderly from having this giant boomer retirement crisis, it's basically like the parents would eat their children. The Saturn myth, essentially, where we basically ate our children to preserve the
the boomer generation, and that's in the product of higher housing prices and higher cost of living for relative to wages as a byproduct of all these higher asset prices. And that we preserve the retirement, but at the same time we lowered the quality of life of younger people. It's showing up now that our economy is heavily weighted up to the top 10% of earners, but particularly the boomer generation investor class. First, the event when most of the consumer is driven by W2 employees. You would have job losses and now we're not even aren't working the amount more. And so that's why we have really relatively robust job market. Right? Because you have demand being held up for servicing the needs for older generation, primarily financing, and healthcare. And I'm not going to reply to those two things. The economy there, the two biggest segments of the project. Second, really grinder of this whole thing. Positive that boomers in retirees who will actually stand for retirement. About, I've seen this anywhere from 10 to 40% of people live solely on Social Security, but after doing some thinking about it and diving a little deeper, it's probably closer to lower. Those who effectively did save for retirement, they are not dependent on a job, or they get their dividend check, or they get their bond interest payments, or they can sell some shares of their stock that's on their 4% withdrawal plan, and as long as the market doesn't crash. So you can have coming along because the asset prices are catching up with inflation, and the spending power, whether it's through dividend, interest, or divesting, like bringing up cash out of the portfolio, is enough to cover their living expenses and a little bit beyond being spent on vacation. But that is what the Brazilian economy would otherwise. And the second thing, we talked about on TV, media, that's not like the younger audience, that it's the marketing for most consumer products is not more like if you know the joke that was Fox News, all the ads are prescription drugs, but it's not really Fox News anymore. Like main sports channels and other things that just really see more older demographics. So a lot of ads are shifting their client base to improving products that serve that market. And the other thing really that is that the wealth, income, and quality is measured by the Gini coefficient. It's hard to rule out what it is, but the coefficient is measured of like the 0 to 1 depending on what concentration of the income is owned by how here everybody owns equal share, one person owns the entire economy. And the income coefficient for wealth and equality is about 0.85. I mean, it's heavily concentrated in the upper 5% of people. And even more content of the distribution to the upper wealth of the top 10%. And 80% of wealth of the top 20%. But if you adjust it for age, that number drops from 25 to closer to 0. And that's a 40% decline when it comes to quality. In the age of dry and is actually similar. The income quality is 0.1, considerably higher. But if you take out age as a piece of the variable and factor that in, then income inequality also dropped by about 40%, closer to 20%. So it would just put it equality level lower than a lot of European countries. So it's not necessarily that there's just a few rich families that own it. There's about 1% of people that drive while everybody else is older people who accumulated wealth in a career, lifelong career, have other people don't because they have solutions for math. What you're really saying is I just want that's not really saying, that's effectively what you're doing. And you're going to see a political divide really on two issues. One is and is it a political imperative to keep it up or let it drop? I think because of natural attrition due to like the generation gradually dying out, like years turn 78, which is life expectancy. However, among the top 10% of income earners, they're expected to live to about 90. So that's why this thing is going a little bit slower turnover expectancy. And between 2024 and 2044, you're going to have like 3% increase on average in housing supply in high population cities. Just and
at Dom's, the ordinary pretzels just isn't enough, so they add favorite seasoning and tempting butter flavor into every delicious.
Dealing with dark spots until I got it.
I thought I had embedded it, but it's actually mesh, and it's still hard to
It helps reduce scarring and reduce.
then you have other factors such as well, as people get very old because they're going through retirement but healthy energy generally right now. Like they can go on vacation, they can go on cruising, fly to visit friends, like all 70, and maybe you're early 90 or your late 80s aren't going to be no longer here, or you're going to be too old or tired. And so the consumer is going to break and bend over at that point.
Oh no.
Living healthier and longer than expected.
Not you again.
And like there's a lot of studies to show that the average 70-year-old has the same brain power and like intellectual content that the 53-year-old did in 2000. So this is going to probably get healthier generally. And that is even before factoring more recent trends that people are getting more
Video call.
before. So
How have you not been banned yet?
And the other problem really is too is that you're going to have credit card issues too because millennials are now the majority of credit card debt holders. They have surpassed all the other generations. And so that also just shows you how strained finances are for the 45 and under crowd really in America nowadays. And so the thing is, like, if you let the communities naturally occur, the housing market would go down. But a lot of people don't want to see their main investment decline. And so they might try to do political things to keep the housing up at the expense of other things, that increasing immigration to fill up housing supply, which I don't think is politically popular with AI disrupting jobs. But that is one, like our countries, Canada and Australia, which have this demographic problem well before us, tried to deal with it. And now they're facing us. But Canada has had zero GDP per capita growth since 2016, despite decreasing their population at a rate of over 1% a year for immigration. So that's one solution that they might attempt to keep the housing prices up. The other one would be to artificially hold down interest rates. And President Trump has talked about this. There's a very trying to lower interest rates. And that would probably, in the short run, put some more lower mortgage payments. But in the long run, you're just creating more buying power for a relatively fixed amount of assets. So that will cause other inflation in other parts of the economy. Because house 41% is CPI. If a house costs a certain amount to live in, you're not going to work for a salary that you can't afford it. And that's going to cause like a price wage spiral, kind of like how oil prices did in the 70s. So that's one flip side. The second one is inflation in general. I think a lot of younger people who have relatively low income are going to be pro. They're not going to be progressive, but they're going to demand the government to print money to pay certain benefits and other things like that. And generally, inflation, it rewards the asset holders who are smart enough to invest in inflation, and it rewards the very low end. People will not work less than break even. Like there's just no, especially without the minimum wages have to rise, even if there is no minimum rise. Otherwise, people aren't going to work for less than it costs to feed them. And around inflation we have in 2020 to 2023, the biggest wage gains were among the bottom 20 percentile of workers. And I would expect, and I saw a similar pattern really in the 70s. And I think you get a repeat. The middle the most from inflation, especially, I mean, high inflation averaging about 5%. Like moderate inflation is a different story. Asset holders come down. I think that you're going to have a big change in health trends that not going to be seen as in hope. A lot of concentrated things that privately held for them. All money concentrated in real estate, why it all opens up simultaneously. And if markets, a lot of it is flow. Like if there's a bunch of sellers and not as much buyers, even if the fundamentals are okay, prices are going to go down. 401ks have been one of the biggest supports for the market. Like basically 401k became mainstream in the 80s. It's been a constant bid, particularly for S&P 500. Everybody took their 401k and S&P index fund or something similar, and it's caused a trajectory up. But now 401ks have flattened out because there are still new workers putting their 401ks, but given the concentration of who are retiring, those outflow. Spending or heirs selling, whatever reason people sell on their retirement age.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and I think that because of this natural instinct to put in the S&P into consistently strong returns for risk assets, a lot of the boomer generation has a much riskier portfolio than they should at their age. Like if you do the historical from a perspective of a wealth manager, the historical like allocation is usually your age is percent in bonds. Like, and so you think that most boomers would have their income in majority fixed income products, but they are mostly 60% plus equities on average for the most part still. And so them unwilling to unwind the risk has been allowed their wealth to go up a lot more than expected because the returns have been good. But it also means that when that shifts and risk has to come down, whether it's because the market goes down, people panic, or that money is sold, there's everything else in cash. It's going to have a big implication when that trade unwinds in the long term. I'm not making any market predictions. None of this is investment advice, but I'm just trying to just explain some implications really of the silver economy. The other one is healthcare. Healthcare is going through a boom, but it's a temporary one. Because the population pyramid is going to normalize somewhat post, say, 2045. And so, I don't think, for example, retirement home is a particularly great investment right now. For several reasons. One, you have more funds.
What makes you say Mike's a better lover at the moment? Because I haven't talked to him in a month. I don't know if there was a disconnection last week or this past Friday when he called, if it was really him. I don't even know if he's going to reach out to me again, but Vince, you know, he's going to call me tomorrow. And it's just hard because Vince told me and the other girl too. It's like, know I'm a good woman, and they both know I'm the person that would be ideal to settle down with. But neither one of them want to grow the fuck up and just like pick the right person. It's weird. It's like their heart is telling them to choose me, but their mind is telling them to go elsewhere. Like, I don't understand it. I can be the best of both. I can be a slut. I can be a good girl. Like, I don't get what their issue is. And it's like, for me to always feel second best, like, it sucks. It's like, these guys, I should be making them feel like second best. Why am I, like, I'm too good for them to even consider me as a second option, or to go pursue someone else and that. Because it's like, oh, Alexis is a good girl. She's the one I want to settle with, but I'm not ready for that right now. So, you know, she loves me. She's crazy about me. She's always going to be there for me. And it sucks for me because it's like, you know, I could be a bitch too. I could be, it's like, I should just not take any guys seriously anymore. I should just play everybody. Like, being good, where did it get me? Where I am right now. And then I had that other Jake guy. He called me randomly out of the blue today. I thought he was going to come see me at the show. He didn't freaking show up. He didn't even message me back. Calls me randomly. I said, hey, I'm just working, and didn't even text me back. It's like, all these guys are weird, man. Like, I swear to God, I'm thinking about turning dyke, but then again, I can't even handle fucking women either.
$39.95 a month for a whole year and get 3 months free. Visit sparklight.com.
Hello, my name is Anthony Norman. I'm here at. Sorry. Okay.
What makes you say Mike's a better lover at the
It may look
moment?
a lot different.
I haven't talked to him in a month.
You're going to see major.
I don't know if there was a disconnection last week or this past Friday when he called. If it was really him. I don't even know if he's going to reach out to me.
When the ratio of millennials to boomers becomes 2 to 1, you finally have the votes to reform Social Security. Because most people 40 and under aren't expecting to get a dime from Social Security, realistically. Like, any of you guys are making a financial plan based on a Social Security check, good luck with that. But and so they aren't really as hostile to the idea of cutting these benefits because they weren't expecting to get them anyway. Whether it's for taking the retirement age or outright cuts, or means health or retirement for people. I think a combination of the two will happen. And I think it's the same thing with property taxes. Like, if you don't own real estate, you're going to be more friendly to property. Florida, their recent proposal to eliminate property taxes is kind of an exception because it's the oldest state in the union by far. But as the boomers shrink in power, we're going to see a lot of reforms and like GIMBY probably becoming more popular. Yes, in my backyard, so more density development. You're probably going to have more higher property taxes because you own, especially on second, third properties. Most young people don't own second and third properties, so they would want to free up that supply for people who have their first home. The types of politics around real estate is going to drastically shift, and I think you're going to see older voters shift to the left politically as a result of this too, post-Trump. And because the younger millennial right is going to be very aggressive on trying to reform entitlement for older people, and the Democrats have run as being the savior of the old system, because most people in the generation look through the most prosperous time in American history. They want to keep things the way they were, which was like a center-left, like very gerontocratic focused welfare system. And like the Democrats can easily run, say, look, we're going to protect it from these people who want to take away the benefits. And so I think you will see a shift in elderly more to protect. They might still be culturally conservative, and I think the Democrats have to drop some of the woke stuff to succeed as a strategy. But they're economically, and that I think you could see a potential realignment of the older generation shifting more to the left. We already see this in the rest of the developed world. Like Canada, Carney won on the back of boomer voters. In Europe, the median millennial in Europe is to the right of the median millennial in America. They're running on preserving whether it's the housing prices or preserving benefits for older people is a more tangible fear. And I think Carney's campaign could be a template for others around the world who wanted to build that kind of model. Are we inevitably going to have a battle between older voters preserving their dying welfare institutions versus younger voters supporting extreme right-wing populists, and the society just spirals down into decay like a Latin American country? No, because there is kind of one variable that could kind of save this, and that is really the development of AI and robotics technology. They could fill a lot of the labor shortages that would become the byproduct of the low birth rates, the sort of byproduct of the high housing costs, and also can provide a way to be more cost efficient in providing end-of-life health care, so we don't have the fiscal draw as bad as anticipated. The other real kind of benefit to the AI revolution, really in regards to this, is that it can allow people to work much longer than previous generations, because there's going to be less physical work done. Most jobs will be management jobs versus either like intellectual grunt work or physical grunt work. And so a career can last a lot longer. And if we continue to improve longevity technology and healthcare technology, or biotech, that's the other silver lining here, we can have much longer health spans for much longer periods of time. So even if the millennials don't get started on things like buying a house or family formation, so they're at 35 instead of 25, they can still have maybe a longer useful life post getting into the housing ladder or post having a family, because their career could end maybe at 75 instead of 65, and they can have a healthy lifespan to 100 instead of 80. And that might just be just, I think that's probably the best solution to this, is we need to encourage and figure out ways that people can lengthen their lifespan, and more importantly, their health span, like productive years, not just working, but living an enjoyable life so they don't feel like they got screwed from having a late start. That kind of wraps up my speech on the silver economy. Now it's time for Q&A.
If you have wet AMD or DME, you never want to lose sight of the things you love. And your condition doesn't have to steal the moment. Long-lasting EYLEA HD delivers powerful vision improvements that can save your vision for the future. EYLEA HD is the only treatment for wet AMD and DME that helped at least 8 out of 10 people go up to 4 months between injections after 3 initial monthly treatments. Don't take EYLEA HD if you have an eye infection, eye pain, redness, or are allergic to it. Eye injections like EYLEA HD may cause eye infections, separation of the retina, rare but severe swelling of blood vessels in the eye, or increased eye pressure. There is an uncommon risk of heart attack or stroke. There's still so much to see. Ask about next generation EYLEA HD, a treatment retina specialists trust.
I studied the 10 most powerful empires of the last 500 years and the last 3 reserve currencies. It took me through the rise and decline of the Dutch Empire and the Gilded. Nationwide has strategies built to help you save time. It's a game changer. Their timely marketing insights help simplify conversations with your clients. But sometimes actions speak louder than words. Crushed it.
Oh, baby, got my grill stuff. Thank you. Hey, Tom.
So how do you really get rich? What is the truth to getting into that elusive $20 million creator net worth territory as a self-made person? Welcome to Analyzing Finance with Nick. This video is going to be a little bit different than some of the other stuff I'm going to make. A lot of people have asked me in my consultation forums where people reach out to me for questions about wealth management or financial planning, career guidance, or a variety of other things. This one simple question, and that is, how do I get rich?
That's the question we're going to answer today. And I'm just going to give you my honest, unfiltered answer on this. And just as a disclaimer, I have not hit the rich level yet. $20 million net worth is one of my many goals. I'm in the process of doing a lot of the things I mentioned in this playbook. So you're not getting a perspective of somebody who has completed the playbook necessarily, but you're getting the perspective of somebody who understands the economics of all of this and is in the process of going through the path to wealth right now. So you're following along with my journey as being a subscriber to this channel in a way. And no, the answer is not being a famous YouTuber. In fact, I did a video literally titled "Why You Should Not Be a YouTuber." So I'm not really spoiling much there. But I just wanted to make you my perspective as somebody who is going through the process versus somebody who has completed the process. Also, my incentives are aligned with yours. I run a wealth management company, and if you all become successful, it means that I have more future high net worth clients who I am predisposed to enjoy working with, as we both like the material of this channel. So what is it? I think you are somebody who grew up in a middle class to upper middle class background, or you background that no get. How do I do calorie level? Well, that's what I'm going to explain. To start, there's 3 books I recommend reading, and a lot of the concepts from these 3 books I'm going to be addressing in this video. First one is a book called How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis, and it basically explains how he was able to make a fortune off of starting several magazines. The most famous of these magazines are Maxim, PC Pro, and several other tech and pro culture themed magazines, mostly in the UK, but a lot of them have spread to be popular across the English-speaking world. Another book I recommend is called The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, one of the co-founders of Andreessen Horowitz. It's about the real grind that it takes to be a startup founder, and a lot of the struggles that it involves with building a business and the persistence needed to make it to the end. So that's another one I would recommend. And then the third book that I would recommend is Unscripted by M.J. DeMarco, and I'm going to put another 2. That is the book Millionaire Fastlane that he also wrote, kind of just to shake you into a more entrepreneurial mindset in general. The books are often perceived as a little bit heterodox.
Hey, what's going on? So tell me more about what happened.